Do you value your employees more than an old washing machine? It may sound odd, but many companies unknowingly prioritize outdated equipment over their most vital asset, their people. Today, we dive into a fresh report from McKinsey focusing on the critical challenge of attracting and retaining Gen Z talent in manufacturing. I'll break down how ingrained biases like the sunk cost fallacy often skew our investment decisions, and I'll unveil 3 innovative strategies that not only cater to Gen Z, but will revitalize your entire organization and cut costs. Ready to transform your approach and future-proof your organization? Let's get started. Let's get back to the washing machine. It's making some weird noises, so you call someone to do some maintenance. It's cheaper than getting a new one, so you go ahead with the fix. Another month later, and it's at it again. Now it's growling like a badger that's trapped in your sock drawer. But you just paid to fix it, so you can't replace it now. Does that sound familiar? You keep throwing good money into it when it would have been better in the first place to just buy a new one. How you spent money in the past biases your future decisions. This is the classic sunk cost fallacy, letting prior investments impact decisions, causing you to cling to something long past its useful life when an alternative would have been financially superior. Moving on now would feel like you're admitting a mistake. It happens all the time, and guess what? Businesses do this too, with old projects, equipment, acquisitions, and even their employees. Just because it's a bias doesn't mean it's always a bad thing. Biases tend to be mental tricks our minds use as shortcuts to decision making. Our brains do them because they make our lives easier. I do propose that there's an area where businesses can use this bias to its advantage by reframing how we think about our situations to keep money from literally walking out the door. Now, Gen Z may force businesses to change how they think about hiring and employee retention. To enable this mindset shift, I strongly believe that we can use the sunk cost fallacy to create value. By enabling employers and managers to purposefully change their perspective, they may actually improve efficiency and output. I was recently reading this article from McKinsey on attracting Gen Z to manufacturing jobs. One fact that struck me was that for each vacancy in frontline manufacturing work, the authors estimated the impact at $52,000 in lost productivity, time, and training. As you guessed from the intro, this immediately got me thinking about the sunk cost impact of employees quitting, and how that money could have been better used than replacing the employees by not having them leave in the first place. Before we discuss the tips for better attracting and retaining employees, I want to make the case for using the sunk cost fallacy and shifting our perspectives comparing equipment and employees. In the case of equipment, this happens all the time. We stick with things well past their useful life. In the case of manufacturing, this can be a budgeting phenomenon or short-term financial performance perspective. Can we limp this equipment along for another year and eventually figure out how to make a bigger investment to upgrade to a newer model? We can improve our compensation this year by maintaining some old equipment at the cost of future efficiency, but since my bonus is based on this quarter's results, that's a future me problem. The data points to employees being treated in the opposite way. Internal employees are increasingly given fewer reasons to stay. It's consistently shown that the best way to raise your salary is to company hop. Companies increasingly cut costs and remove long-term liabilities through reducing benefits programs such as pensions or even paid time off. Yet in doing so, they've removed incentives for employees to stay with their current organization. A shift in cultural transparency with Glassdoor and social media has reduced the information imbalance, so individuals have a greater awareness of what their peers make, or at least what they say they make. The biggest reason not to change jobs at this point is the effort that it takes to find another job and the risk of the unknown and the grass is greener problem. That doesn't seem like the smartest strategy for employers to lean on to keep your best and brightest. A big difference between capital investment in equipment and employees is that employees actually always have the power to quit whenever they want. All of us have the ability to say, that's enough, and just walk out the door. With organizations holding the power to fire and downsize, the counteraction is the individual's opportunity to go all Peter Gibbons from Office Space and just say,
I don't like my job, and I don't think I'm going to go anymore.
Let's imagine if big equipment investments had this same power. You invest in evaluating a new machine for your plant. You form a team to evaluate a variety of different options, assessing their pros, their cons, and their ability to do the job. Eventually, you decide on which machine to buy, and now comes the effort of installing the equipment, enabling it to communicate effectively with your existing infrastructure, tweaking its output, and refining its ability to make significant contributions to your operations. That whole process takes months of work, a huge upfront investment in time from your existing employees, and the initial monetary investment to buy or lease the equipment. How is this different from hiring an employee? In hiring, you often form a committee to prepare a job description, you engage a recruiting firm to identify potential candidates, you spend hours reviewing and interviewing applicants, all the while straining your remaining staff with the excess work to pick up the slack created by the vacancy. Once you decide on someone, it takes more time for them to accept, quit their existing job, pass a drug test, potentially relocate, and even once they're in the door, you need to invest to train them. They need to learn their role and how they fit into your systems and culture. Only months or even a year later do they approach the productivity of one of your existing employees. When I was a manager, I viewed 6 to 12 months as a typical ramp-up period because of the technical specialization of jobs for my team. When you step back and assess it, how different is it to select a new piece of equipment versus an employee? What's the overall cost? In the article, McKinsey estimates that for each frontline manufacturing employee leaving, it'll cost the firm $52,000. I've seen other estimates give a 6 to 9 month salary as the organization's cost to replace an employee. With annual quit rates exceeding 10% for certain industries and data from LinkedIn and Microsoft showing that a higher percentage of employees want to quit their jobs today compared to the height of the Great Resignation, what is your potential sunk cost waiting for their moment to walk out the door for the last time? Would you put all the time and effort to finding a new machine, evaluating suppliers, installing, and optimizing the output if the vendor had the option to, at a moment's notice to say, we've got a better offer for this equipment somewhere else, so we're going to have it phone it in for the next 2 weeks, and then we're moving it to your competitor. Sorry, but that's exactly what organizations do with their internal employees. The sunk cost aspect of hiring, onboarding, training, let alone the impact on the rest of your organization's workload and culture, it's increasingly ignored. Digging into McKinsey's manufacturing data, what does this mean and what's the impact? Using their numbers for the manufacturing organization with $52,000 in lost value per departure and a 17.6% attrition rate, this means they're losing nearly $10,000 per remaining employee annually. If you could cut the attrition rate in half, you could invest an additional $5,000 per employee and still break even. And remember, this is the number for frontline manufacturing and not higher paid white-collar work. Before I move on for how I would maximize value by reinvesting in your current employees to improve attraction and retention, consider the awkward hypothetical. What if we considered current employees through the same financial lens as that old washing machine? Maybe organizations and employees would actually be better off. What if we took a page out of the management philosophy of Flint Tropics owner-player coach Jackie Moon? Jackie, can you introduce us to your new employee?
5'10". I traded away our washing machine to get him. Ed Monix!
What were your key criteria to bring Monix in?
He could shoot the basketball. Most importantly, he actually agreed to come here.
So how did you make that difficult financial decision?
I'm a pretty aggressive owner. When I heard Kentucky needed a washing machine, I looked at ours, even though we need ours. I said I gotta pull the trigger on this.
If we look at the financial impact holistically, the question is, how should employers invest in their people and what makes the biggest impact? More traditional thinking would point to money as being the primary motivator, but I think Gen Z is pushing a change in values and priorities that makes sense for all of us. While compensation is absolutely critical at a certain threshold, it's rarely the driving factor in staying or leaving. Once the discussion is purely about money, you've likely already lost, so it may become a negative sunk cost fallacy of throwing more money at an already disengaged employee to stay. All that money buys is time and likely suboptimal performance unless coupled with resolving the underlying engagement issues. So what are the right investments to make? From the study, this chart shows the most important factors for each dimension of taking the job, staying with the organization, and ultimately deciding to quit. The most impactful reasons to stay are flexible workplace, meaningful work, safety, reliability of the team, and career advancement. I want to tackle a couple of these and share what I think organizations can do to retain their employees while increasing overall engagement and productivity. Most importantly, where should you redeploy the money that you'll save from reducing attrition of your employees to benefit your whole organization?
Meaningful work.
The easiest one on this list is providing meaningful work. Across all three dimensions, contributing to something meaningful was the second most important factor in taking, staying, or leaving a job. This is about setting good goals and connecting the objective to what matters. It recognizes that, more than presumed for previous generations, work isn't just about trading your time for money. It's about contributing to something that makes a difference. It's understanding how my individual effort has a meaningful impact on something bigger than myself. It's not about driving the bottom line of corporate financial results. It's not even about how my productivity contributes to my bonus. It's the question of this channel. Why? Why am I giving up hours of my life to do this? This is fundamentally a framing challenge, and the solution is simple, yet it takes work and most of all, consistency. It's from top to bottom, from upper management down through frontline managers, maintaining consistent messaging about what you're trying to accomplish and ensuring the walk matches the talk. As we see in branding and marketing challenges these days, organizations that are inconsistent in their values and purpose get called out. Gen Z has changed the conversation to highlight values, both in how they shop and work. If you want to get a new employee to join you and, more critically, to stay with you, it's about communicating clear values and ensuring everything you do aligns with those ideals. For your company, do your goals highlight the real why for your organization, or are they focused on secondary, less meaningful factors? How could you reshape the message to focus on your why? If we look at Patagonia as an example of a company with clear values, can you imagine using them to craft priorities that translate to each level and function? Their core values represent the past while also creating a vision of what the company wants to become and maintain for the next 50 years. Their first value is quality. Build the best product, provide the best service, and constantly improve everything we do. The best product is useful, versatile, long-lasting, repairable, and recyclable. Our ideal is to make products that give back to the earth as much as they take. Wow, just look at the power of that one value to create meaning. Think about all the ways you can create direct correlations to an individual's objectives that have a straight line to this single idea. Are you managing manufacturing? It's about creating the best product and constant improvement. Each worker directly contributes to this core company value for each product interaction. Are you in sales or customer support? It's about providing the best service and backing products that offer meaningful value to customers and instill trust in their performance. And it does all of this in service to something even more impactful, doing it for the earth. Does your organization draw connections like this and create a vision that provides meaning to attract and maintain employees? Moreover, what's the actual cost of creating and maintaining goals like this? As I read these values, I don't see Patagonia having a Gen Z problem. How about your company?
Career advancement.
The second and more challenging aspect is career advancement. While it doesn't show up in the reasons to take a job, it becomes a significant reason to stay, and most critically, the number one reason given for leaving a job. Remember, this study was only for frontline manufacturing. I anticipate career development is even more impactful for higher skilled, white-collar employees. The feeling of progress and personal growth is a fundamental need. So much of our life goes into our profession, and we need to both contribute to something meaningful while gaining the opportunity to grow ourselves. The journey is the goal, and achievement rarely leads to long-term satisfaction. If you're only trading your time for money, doing the same thing day in and day out, even if you're contributing to something meaningful, it lacks the personal growth opportunity for challenge and fulfillment. I'll acknowledge this was one of the major reasons that I left my previous job, given it was connected to a greater self-realization of who I was and what I wanted to become. Growth opportunities kept me with the same organization for over a decade. Ultimately, though, it was the limitation to gaining skills and new experiences at the pace and along the trajectory that I desired that led me to make a change. If there's a place where I feel resources saved from reducing employee turnover can be redeployed with the greatest impact, it's in employee development, training, and establishing and communicating clear career progression opportunities. Even for frontline manufacturing, employees expressed a strong desire to grow. The McKinsey authors gave the example of workers noticing inefficiencies or issues with equipment on the line. However, they lacked the skills and authority to do something about it and had to wait for a qualified technician to fix the problem. Employees grew increasingly frustrated with their inability to troubleshoot such issues and truly own their part of the process. To remedy this, the organization created a new role and opportunity for maintenance and operations to collaborate, building skills and rewarding those who took the initiative to learn and troubleshoot. By developing and implementing this program, employees gained more valuable skills and operational efficiency increased while enhancing the engagement and personal ownership. This is a clear example of a win-win grounded in career advancement and taking time to invest in skills. As we think about it, for each of our organizations, where are there moments of inefficiency or frustration that negatively impact productivity? Which of these is ripe for the opportunity to turn it into training and skill development? How can simple improvements empower employees to increase their impact while also demonstrating a greater commitment by the organization to the individual? Another illustration of this commitment and win-win is the investment behind tuition reimbursement programs. Such programs offer significant value to employees, highlighting an organization's long-term commitment to their individual development while providing new skills. It shows the company's willingness to invest in them as individuals, raising their transferable knowledge without the fear of them taking those skills elsewhere, because the overall proposition of staying and contributing to meaningful work and the opportunity for advancement provides them no reason to leave. Beyond just the educational development and building trust and goodwill, this investment's a financial win, as it's tax deductible in the US for employees up to $5,250 per employee per year. This offers real value to the employees, provides financial benefits to the organization, and demonstrates a real commitment and trust. Lastly, I would invest in establishing clear professional development and career tracks. Take the time to craft materials illustrating future opportunities for growth and progression within the organization. Establish mentorship programs and use this in conjunction with your managers facilitating genuine career discussions with their people. While some folks may like blazing their own path, helping clarify potential options overcomes the overwhelming effect of having too many choices or no clear direction. Not clearly defining opportunities may lead some individuals to assume there is no path forward or that the company lacks interest in them advancing their careers. From an organizational perspective, think about your sunk cost of these employees. How can you develop your future organization through small but meaningful investments in your current people? What's the overall cost of developing and maintaining such programs compared to the alternative to costly and riskier external hiring? I've already invested so much in this individual. It'd be a significant loss to have them walk away, and it would strain my remaining employees, let alone all the time it would take to find, hire, and train someone new. If you're saying, well, I can probably find someone quickly that would perform at about the same level, maybe your employees are saying the same thing. Well, I can probably find another job that cares about me just as much as this company, so why not leave and discover my real worth and maybe a greater fulfillment? Investments in career development provide you with the opportunity to enhance your culture and improve morale today while enabling your future success. Think about the financial impact of investing internally in such programs and receiving the multidimensional return of higher engagement, increased productivity, and improved retention while shaping and developing your future organization.
Workplace flexibility.
The other major factor for Gen Z employees is workplace flexibility. I love this one as it challenges historical ways of working for the right reasons. By highlighting the role work plays in their lives, companies need to rethink how they've done things in the past. My favorite demotivator poster is tradition. Just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean it's not incredibly stupid. And nowhere is this truer than in the workplace. In the McKinsey article, the authors cite a consumer packaged goods manufacturer that traditionally used rigid 12-hour shifts. As they struggled to maintain staffing with this schedule, they restructured jobs to not require 12 hours of continuous work. They cross-trained employees, allowing for greater flexibility. They integrated part-time and full-time workers to deliver what really mattered, keeping production going 24 hours a day. The assumption was that 12-hour shifts were the best way to operate because that's what we've always done. The focus was on maintaining operating procedures and they lost perspective of the actual goal. Here's where I'd encourage you to challenge your underlying assumption and reassess what actually matters. Once upon a time, there may have been a good reason when 12-hour shifts were implemented. What is lost to history is likely the why of that decision, and you're left with only the output. So what are the 12-hour shift aspects for your company? Where are there procedures in place whose whys are lost to history, and only the legacy of maintaining the status quo keeps them in place, rather than refocusing on what really matters? One of my other mantras to my employees was never assume the person who did this job before you knew what they were actually doing. Be willing to question previous decisions, focusing on what the decision was actually trying to accomplish. Is the goal to maintain 12-hour shift structure, or is it to optimize output and minimize downtime? Maybe there's a sunk cost in your business model itself. You say, we've always had 12-hour shifts, hired employees this way, and we've had this level of turnover, so that's just the cost of doing business. There's a sunk cost in how management and leadership have been trained, and investing in new ways of work feels completely unnecessary. So we choose to band-aid over inefficiencies because it's less effort than completely revamping our system. Gen Z may be doing all of us a favor by pushing on these fallacies, driving quit rates up, and making the cost of maintaining traditional ways of working unsustainable. Prolonged low unemployment has instilled a completely different set of values and priorities around how the latest generation views a job. So back to the overall factor, workplace flexibility. To me, the next major area of investment is reassessing what truly matters to your organization and how work can be reimagined to fit the current environment. This gets at integration of technology such as AI and automation, and reevaluating workplace norms such as remote work. Take time to assess how could we enable flexibility? What historical assumptions remain that no longer make sense? Before you say that's too expensive and we have a system that works, look at the potential financial impact of employee turnover and consider how you could proactively redeploy those funds to make meaningful differences that enhances engagement, productivity, and maybe even unlocks a completely different dimension of the workplace. This may also ask you to ignore historical managerial accounting perspectives, but ask yourself if they make sense and how might we restructure to achieve truly optimal financial results. Think about this. If the precedent didn't exist and you were creating this organization from scratch today, is this the model that you would select? While I strongly believe meaningful work, career advancement, and flexibility are the most critical factors to engage and retain your Gen Z employees, there are two other factors that I briefly want to address: compensation and management. I touched on this earlier, but compensation only cracks the top 5 reasons when an employee chooses to leave an organization. Likely at that point, it's too late to resolve the issue. That doesn't mean compensation could be ignored. To approach compensation from a different perspective, I was recently coaching someone on product innovation, and they discussed how consumer research showed people ranked convenience compared to quality and performance for their product. While convenience scored higher, that doesn't mean performance isn't important. It just means, from an improvement standpoint, consumers perceive greater value innovating around convenience as long as performance doesn't drop below some unstated threshold. I view compensation as the same way relative to flexibility, meaningful work, and development opportunities. Back to the chart of reasons to join, stay, or leave, compensation only shows up here in the leaving decision. I assure you, it's important in each of the others, but it surpassed the significance threshold, enabling the other factors to be more important. Once these other factors erode away, compensation becomes more visible. Just like a toothache, it's the enamel outside that matters a lot more until the nerve underneath is exposed. And then you have a whole different problem that would have been better managed with preventative care.
4 out of 5 dentists approve this analogy.
I definitely encourage investment behind the other areas discussed here, but be proactive on compensation to avoid that becoming the reason to look in the first place. Compensation is the corporate equivalent to flossing. No one really likes it. It takes time and resources, and in the short term, it feels unnecessary and a waste. But if you don't, it causes way more expensive problems later. As I said, it's well known at this point the best way to increase your salary is to leave. If you want to focus on the financial impact to your company, the replacement cost at 6 to 9 months salary is much higher than providing proactive adjustments based on the market and organizational risks. At the height of the Great Resignation, I saw starting salaries for new employees 10 to even 20% higher than existing high performers. This frustrated me, and while I understand the immediate financial benefit of keeping wages lower, that fails to acknowledge the labor market and the risk being incurred by doing so, particularly with the fading taboo of discussing salary. Gen Z seems acutely aware of this, as they've grown up in a very different labor market than geriatric millennials like me. In fact, since the 1970s, US unemployment has been below 4% only 4 years. All of them have happened since 2018, and that doesn't count 2024, where we sit at 3.9% overall and 2.2% for those with a bachelor's degree or higher. While it may feel like employment is tightening, and that may be true for certain industries, the data doesn't reflect that yet. And if not considered, you're gambling 6 to 9 months economic loss over a much smaller impact to be proactive where appropriate. I also want to address the role of management in all of this. We focus this discussion at the highest corporate level, but for each of these proposals, your frontline managers have the essential job of carrying this out. The old adage goes that people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. This is true in some respect, but organizations absolutely play a significant role, particularly as we discuss creating meaningful work. Managers need to be the mouthpiece for the company, translating initiatives for individuals and teams and bringing them to life. As we look at investment areas, your individual managers are critical for understanding the individual to assist in their career development, and they own translating corporate values into individual priorities. If you aren't setting up your managers for success, you're setting your organization up for failure. And thinking about values, I mentioned one of the most critical aspects is consistency. Gen Z and society as a whole have become much more willing to call out hypocrisy where a brand and company's actions and words don't align. Managers are where the rubber meets the road, and they need to recognize the significant role they play. Ensuring managers have appropriate training and support provides the foundation for all of this to be successful. To wrap things up, I truly believe we can learn from Gen Z. Anticipating the future of work, it's clear values matter in employment choices. This shift can drive change in our organizations that benefit everyone. As older employees leave the workforce and traditional approaches to employee retention continue to sunset, a younger generation shifts the focus to the true meaning of work. Allow this shift to refocus on your company's real purpose and consider how best to invest in creating a sustainable, financially optimized organization. Use a little less sunk cost bias where it doesn't make sense in inefficient equipment, and consider shifting your perspective to view your people with an absolute financial impact. Use your bias to your advantage and realize the overall cost of attrition to your organization. As always, now I want to hear from you, particularly any employees who stuck around to this point in the video. What are your organizations doing well that increases your engagement? Was McKinsey right that flexibility, meaning, and advancement are the most significant factors? Click like and leave a comment if you agree with me that these investments will make a positive change for your organization. For employers or senior management that happen to be watching, what am I wrong about? I'd love to grow my perspective as well and think about how we can shape future corporate structures to balance the competing priorities. I really appreciate your time, as always, to listen to my perspective. It would mean a lot to see your comments and, of course, liking and subscribing to let me know that this was another helpful Jared rant. Check out this video next if you'd like to hear more about my thoughts on mistakes in setting meaningful objectives. Again, thanks for watching, keep thinking, and we'll talk again soon.
5-10. I traded away our washing machine to get him. And money!